About $38,000 a year starts before sunrise, with you pulling steel-toe boots over sore feet in a rented room. You check the rotating shift on your phone while the room stays dark, and another person sleeps behind the thin wall. You pack a backpack with a cheap lunch, a water bottle, a charger, a notebook, and safety glasses. Before the city wakes, the early bus carries you toward the industrial park outside town. You park the older car far from the main entrance, where senior staff get the close spaces. You press your badge to the reader, empty your pockets, and wait for the guard to nod. The security man-trap seals around you. You follow the senior technician through white corridors with a handheld radio clipped too high on your belt. You read the humidity display aloud before the senior technician checks your answer. You stand beside the open electrical panel with both hands flat against your pants. You push a cart of filters toward the cooling unit while the wheels rattle over the concrete. The white-lit corridor hums before the work piles up. By mid-morning, you hold the flashlight steady while the senior technician checks a belt inside the cooling unit. The senior technician trusts you with carrying, labeling, and watching, and the small check matches the small permission. You squeeze the label maker and tag both cable ends while the senior technician looks over your shoulder. You coil spare fiber in wide loops, careful not to kink the glass inside the jacket. Around lunch, you unload rack rails from the loading dock and stack them beside the staging cage. You break down cardboard from server shipments and sweep foam bits from the floor. You eat a packed sandwich standing near the loading dock. The shift lead points at your shirt and tells you to keep the badge visible while people at the staging cage turn their heads. After the lunch rush, you trail a UPS battery cabinet inspection with a clipboard tucked under one arm. You press the rack door closed, check the latch, and run your fingers along the door seal. You close a simple work order after the senior technician gives you permission. Near quitting time, you badge out at the security desk with dust on your pants and fan noise still in your ears. At night, you copy electrical safety terms into a notebook while the data hall hum stays stuck in your head. A ticket queue lighting your phone before your boots hit the floor is what about $58,000 a year feels like now. You read a high-temperature alert message and swing your legs out of bed. You load the broken-in bag with a multimeter, flashlight, cage nut tool, console cable, gloves, and hearing protection. Early morning traffic carries your company van toward the client site. You sort badge lanyards by building, since each gate has its own rules and its own guard. You give the security guard the delayed visit approval and wait while the guard checks your name. The night tech hands you the shift story, open alarms, watched racks, missing parts, and the vendor expected later. The BMS screen shows a cooling alarm, a normal humidity band, and one PDU warning that needs eyes on it. By mid-morning, you tug the containment door seal and check for gaps along the cold aisle. You walk the hot aisle slowly, feeling the heat rise along the rack faces and under the cable tray. An amber fault light blinks on live gear. Server fans fill the row. You match the asset tag to the remote hands request before you unlock the rack. You and another tech slide the heavy GPU server onto the rails, knees bent and shoulders tight. At midday, you pull the failed power supply and seat the hot swap replacement until the latch clicks. You reseat the cables, then wait for the link light to come back green. The remote hands customer pays for careful live equipment work, not loose heroics, and each clean ticket proves the building can trust your hands. You bite a protein bar between work orders while the radio spits out another call. You pull the air filter from the cooling unit and slide in a clean one. You brush dust from the intake grill until the metal pattern shows again. After lunch, you escort the HVAC vendor to the CRAH unit and stand close enough to stop a wrong panel from opening. You photograph the cabinet position and part label before the replacement disappears into the rack. The PDU alarm comes over the radio, and you call the shift supervisor with the panel name and the row. Late day, you check the tripped breaker with another tech beside you and move with the calm that keeps a room from panicking. You drive home with the on-call phone loud in the cup holder. Hearing protection sits beside the bed while you sleep in pieces. About $78,000 a year reaches your darkroom through a company phone full of messages from the outgoing shift. You read the handover note before your family wakes and mark the alarm that can still bite. You pull on the cleaner lead jacket, clip the radio to your belt, and feel the extra weight in the pocket. Before the morning overlap, you reach the facility gate while the night crew is still inside. You tap the access badge, and the guard says your name before the man-trap opens. The alarm panel flashes in the operations area before your boots touch the data hall. You run shift handover at the whiteboard, walking through open tickets, vendor visits, deliveries, and risks nobody gets to shrug off. You hand the cooling route to a junior technician and point toward the row with the warm return air. You send the apprentice with the vendor and show the apprentice where to stand and where to keep hands clear. Around morning break, you inspect the hot AI row and compare each temperature sensor against the feel of the aisle. Rack loading, airflow gaps, and cabling congestion show whether the heat problem belongs to cooling, power, or a cabinet packed too hard. The operations area glows under wall screens. Mid-morning, you read the method of procedure aloud while the UPS service rep follows each step with a gloved finger. You make the UPS service rep confirm rollback steps before any cabinet door opens. Your lead jacket earns its higher check when you stop the electrician at the wrong breaker and make the room breathe again. You plant your boots, grip the service lead, and help the crew slide the heavy machine back into the rack. You trace fiber through the overhead ladder rack, following the bend until the path makes sense. You make the technician pause and read the rack label again. At lunch, you eat cold food from a cafeteria tray at the shift lead station. The customer contact complains about slow remote hands, and you turn the anger into a task list the crew can finish. You call the security supervisor, verify the failed access approval, and keep the visitor outside the data hall until the name clears. You calm the vendor at the maintenance window with the schedule, the stop point, and the person allowed to approve the next move. Late afternoon, the alarm puts your voice on the incident bridge before anyone touches the affected row. You drive toward the small house later than planned, with fan noise still caught behind your ears. You eat the deli sandwich at the kitchen table while explaining the incident into the company phone. You place the spare part on the parts shelf and say the location out loud for tomorrow's call. Now about $95,000 a year wears a company logo shirt you paid to embroider before the house has coffee. You answer the client message from the edge of the bed and hear the unpaid hours hiding inside the request. You check the garage shelves for the right patch cable, spare labels, gloves, and the part box that matches the job. Before breakfast traffic thickens, you lift the rolling tool bag into the pickup and wedge the ladder beside it. You open the parts bin in the driveway and put your hand on the replacement fan before leaving. From the parking lot, you confirm the access list with the facility contact while security watches the gate. You arrive at the small colocation site and write your name in the sign-in log. Around morning, you kneel in front of the AI training rack and feel the heat pushing out wrong. The front intake is half blocked, and missing panels leave open gaps where hot air rolls forward. You take the photo that will make the client stop arguing with the room. You snap the blanking panel into the empty space and cut off the hot air loop. The small compute room breathes hot air. You check the coolant distribution unit for moisture, pressure alarms, hose rub, and any drip that could turn your invoice into a claim. Late morning, you call the parts supplier from the lot and ask for the fan module that should have been on a shelf yesterday. You lean against the van while the insurance broker explains coverage around live electrical rooms and liquid cooling work. You tell the startup founder the quick look goes on the invoice before your badge ever touches the reader. The breakfast sandwich is cold in the foil. At the co-location site, you roll the crash cart to the cabinet for a remote customer who cannot see the machine. You plug in the console cable, verify the link lights, and name the drive before your hand reaches the latch. You photograph the serial number close enough for the return label to match the failed drive. By mid-afternoon, you tape the failed part into a return box and hand the package across a shipping counter. The invoice carries the whole ticket now, with your reputation sitting where an employer's badge used to sit. You call the slow client from the van and ask for payment while diesel trucks idle beside the dock. Late afternoon, the emergency call kills dinner, and you turn the van toward a small AI room with servers throttling. You sweep grit from the van floor and slide a fresh label roll into the printer. The return box rides beside you while your head keeps pricing cables, fuel, and the next access delay. You sleep beside the loud phone with an emergency snack still crushed in the door pocket. About $140,000 a year wakes you in a better home with a bank notification and payroll sitting in your ribs. You read the technician message about a call-out, then skim the vendor update on the UPS visit that moved again. You open the shop bins before leaving and count the labeled spares your crews will need. By early morning, you drive first to the rented shop, where the bay smells like dust, coffee, and rubber mats. The dispatch whiteboard is crowded with client names, open tickets, and the on-call rotation. You send a service crew to the high-density AI room for preventive maintenance. You hand one technician the remote hands ticket for the colocation customer waiting on photos. You check each emergency contact against badges, parts, and procedures before the crews pull out. Around morning, you stand beside a technician and press on the blanking panel they installed to make sure the row is sealed. You walk the hot aisle containment line and find the flap hanging loose near the hottest cabinets. Service vans idle outside the shop. You walk the data hall with the facilities manager while GPU racks push heat into a cooling system built for smaller loads. You point to the overpacked cabinet, the strained cold aisle, and the missing spare discipline. You sell the maintenance checklist as reliability, since clients pay your company for crews that arrive before heat becomes downtime. You call the technician about the missing ticket photo and ask for the rack face, asset tag, and final cable path. You call the angry client next, calm your voice, and promise corrected documentation before the close of business. At lunch, you buy crew sandwiches and leave the bag on the shop table beside a pile of gloves. You hand the service level agreement to your operations lead and flag the slow response penalty that could eat a good month. You call the broker about the liability policy for work near live electrical systems and coolant lines. You interview the job applicant with rack questions that office IT never teaches. After the afternoon rush, you send a crew toward the overheating GPU cluster and tell the lead to bring leak pads. You drive to the client site behind the crew, passing the dinner place you promised you would make. You put the client engineer, your technicians, and the cooling contractor on one call before anyone starts blaming the rack. You trace the fault from the cooling unit to the cabinet density and make the room prove which problem came first. You eat home dinner with your family, then move the laptop beside the plate. You set tomorrow's on-call rotation before bed, and the phone stays face up on the nightstand. About $300,000 a year begins in a comfortable house while Maya, your operations manager, walks you through the safety report. You scan the stacked calendar at the kitchen counter. Operations call, client review, hiring, site visit, vendor negotiation. Your work boots stay in the car. Before sunrise, you reach headquarters as service vans roll out with ladders, parts bins, and coffee cups. Dispatchers sort crews and parts across several cities, and the regional contracts pay for coverage your own hands could not carry alone. Around breakfast, you press the operations manager on the overnight incidents, cooling alarms, delayed parts, access trouble, and the injury near the dock. You point at the failed unit tag and ask Maya whether the bad part got tagged before the next crew touched the cage. You work the crew schedule across travel time, overtime, skill level, and response windows until the map stops lying. A regional company bills for coverage across cities and liquid cooling vendor coordination, not a single pair of hands. The spare parts cage waits under fluorescent light. Mid-morning, you ride out to a data center campus where the client has more buildings than your old employer had rooms. A pallet sits across an intake path, cardboard edges fluttering in the cold air. You pull the regional manager aside and tell him the technician near the AI hall needs hearing protection before the next walkthrough. The facilities chief meets you at the power room door, and you talk through UPS maintenance without touching a cabinet. You spread the generator schedule across the conference table, while the facilities chief marks battery replacement planning with a pen. You stand beside a quick disconnect and make the client describe leak response before the next row of racks comes online. At lunch, catered sandwiches sit open during the client meeting, and you eat between questions about response coverage. Legal counsel pushes liability language across the proposal, and you push back on any clause that makes one outage eat the year. Your finance manager prices after-hours response and the new shift lead, while you decide whether the margin can carry another hire. After mid-afternoon, you run the incident timeline in a small training room where a wrong move almost became an outage. You order retraining after the wrong cabinet door, then make the crew lead demonstrate the verification step with his badge still on. A clean cart rolls through the data hall with labels facing out, and nobody waits for you to tell them where the tools belong. Family dinner goes quiet when operations calls, and you step into the hallway with a fork still in your hand. The gym lights buzz over empty treadmills while major alarms stay several names below you. Your quiet home office goes dark before sleep, with only the phone waiting for the kind of alarm that brings lawyers. Over $1 million a year begins with an overnight summary filtered before sunrise in a hotel room. You read incident notes before hotel breakfast while coffee cools beside a plate nobody cooked for you. Elena, your assistant, filters the noise from regional emails, but the worst problems still reach your phone. Before the first client block, an executive car takes you to the Technical Operations Center past buildings your crews service through the night. Security camera domes track the arrival, and the guard has the badge ready before the glass doors open. A regional leader reports safety, uptime support, staffing gaps, compliance misses, and the client escalation still burning from yesterday. You direct money into the liquid cooling training program, choosing instructors, lab racks, and certification rules over another quick hire. National contracts pay for risk carried in many markets at once, and a risky contract can cost more than a strong quarter. The Technical Operations Center holds the nation's hum. Mid-morning, you tour a high-density AI facility beside a client executive who wants speed without scorch marks. A fiber trunk crosses overhead beside busway power, and heat gathers where the containment gap should have been sealed. You ask the technical director where certification boundaries stop your technicians from touching coolant work they are not cleared to handle. Beside the coolant distribution unit, you question emergency isolation, spare hoses, and the drip response kit staged under the rack. At lunch, executive plates arrive, and an escalation turns the salad into something you move around with a fork. You negotiate with the enterprise client for response across multiple markets, naming the crews, spares, and limits the promise requires. You point the CFO and legal counsel toward survivable risk, where the company can stand behind the contract without gambling its throat. After mid-afternoon, you join the call with customer leadership after a near outage, and the room waits for your first words. You tell the safety director to schedule retraining, added sign-offs, spare parts controls, and a safety stand-down before the next maintenance window. An equipment manufacturer walks you through the next cooling design, and you press for parts your technicians can service under pressure. At the expensive restaurant, the client dinner pauses while an incident report glows on your phone beside untouched steak. You thank the response team by name after they clear the fault, and the room hears that the standard came from people, not slogans. Later, you stand at the same loading dock where you once swept foam and plastic from server shipments, and the same concrete looks smaller under your shoes. Your private space is quiet at night, with layers of people guarding the racks while the house holds the life those racks paid for.